Prague off the beaten track, Vít Pohanka takes you away from the crowds to the city's hidden gems.
Hello, this is Prague off the beaten track and I'm Vít Pohanka. I wonder if you ever felt like taking a trip to Vietnam without leaving Prague. If you did, well then come with me to a place that many locals have heard about, but few have actually explored. At least I think so. It's called SAPA. Tucked away in the southern district of Libuš, SAPA is often called Prague's Little Hanoi. It's part wholesale market, part cultural hub, and we'll uncover the origins not just of SAPA and its cultural importance, but also the Vietnamese community here in Czechia. So, forget for a moment the astronomical clock and let's go off the beaten track. I entered SAPA through the main entrance, gate number 4 on the southern side of the complex, the one with a big sign that simply says SAPA. After stepping inside, I turned right and found myself standing in front of a small Buddhist temple. There's a little yard here, almost like a peaceful garden with a few Buddhist statuettes, and that's why you probably can hear the wind chimes behind me. They make this soft metallic sound that somehow cuts through the background noise of kitchens, even forklifts and delivery trucks. Now, the reason I came here first to the temple is simple. Before we dive into the sights, sounds and flavors of SAPA, I think it's worth pausing to talk about how this place came to be. And to do that, we need to go back a few decades and look at the history of the Vietnamese community in Czechoslovakia and later Czechia. So, the history of Vietnamese immigration to Czechoslovakia goes back to the mid-1950s, when the first groups of Vietnamese, mostly children, affected by the war, were brought here as a part of international socialist solidarity. A major turning point came in 1973 when a series of agreements between the governments of Czechoslovakia and North Vietnam led to the arrival of thousands of Vietnamese workers, students and apprentices. Officially, the aim was to help rebuild war-torn Vietnam by training skilled workers abroad. But in practice, it also benefited Czechoslovakia, which gained access to cheap and often essential labor for its factories and industrial plants. By the early 1980s, the Vietnamese population in Czechoslovakia peaked at around 30,000 people. Most were men assigned to work in factories across the country, with the largest concentration, about 4,000, right here in Prague. Over time, as the system of organized migration became more rigid, some migrants found ways to bend the rules. Economic motivations began to outweigh educational and ideological ones. And by the end of the 1980s, many Vietnamese were less interested in training than in earning money and sending goods back home. Still, the structure remained in place until 1990, when the official agreements were dissolved. After 1989, when the communist regime fell, things started changing quickly. As the Czech economy shifted and many state-owned factories closed down, the old contracts became meaningless. Some Vietnamese returned home, but many stayed. They reinvented themselves as entrepreneurs, some setting up limited companies or obtaining trade licenses. Others arrived from East Germany, Poland, Slovakia, or directly from Vietnam, either legally or via long and complicated routes. Over time, what had started as a government-to-government labor exchange turned into a full-fledged economic migration. So today, the Vietnamese are one of the most visible and established immigrant communities in the Czech Republic, with places like SAPA, where I'm now, standing as proof of their persistence, adaptability and success. As the Vietnamese community grew and adapted to life in post-communist Czechia, many turned to small business as path to stability and independence. Early on, that meant usually selling goods at street markets or from stalls in public squares. But over time, those modest beginnings turned into something much more permanent. Vietnamese entrepreneurs began buying up small retail spaces, often convenience stores or potraviny, as we call them in Czech. And today, I think you'll find Vietnamese-run shops in virtually every town and city across the country. Even in small villages, it's often the local Vietnamese shop that stays open from early morning until late at night, including Sundays and public holidays when everything else is closed. And in many villages, the Vietnamese shop is the only one. The traditional ones simply went bankrupt. So, while the Vietnamese presence is spread out and woven into the fabric of everyday Czech life these days, SAPA, here in Prague, remains, I think, the undisputed center, the heart of it all. Located in the southern Prague district of Libuš, this sprawling complex of over 350,000 square meters is home to hundreds of businesses, restaurants, warehouses. There's even language school, and there are some other cultural institutions. It's the go-to place for bulk buyers, restaurateurs, and anyone in search of fresh Asian ingredients. But it's also a space where the community gathers, celebrates holidays, sometimes marriages, and passes on traditions to the next generation. And I think that in that sense, SAPA is much more than just a market. It's a place where business, culture, and community come together. It reflects the journey of a whole generation, people who came from halfway across the world, often with very little, and built something lasting, vibrant and uniquely their own. And while many Prague residents still haven't been here, and I really think that SAPA is one of the city's most fascinating, dynamic and truly global corners. Now, I've just stepped out of the quiet little courtyard with the Buddhist temple, and now I'm walking along one of the SAPA's main commercial lanes. They are rectangular, there's more of them, and the entire area, depending on how you measure it, covers somewhere between 25 and 35 hectares, which is roughly 60 to 85 acres. And almost every square meter is put to use. On either side of me are shops of all kinds, many open-air stalls spilling out onto the pavement. There are quite a few cafes and restaurants too, surprisingly lively, even on an ordinary weekday in the middle of the day. I've just passed what looks like an insurance company, and as I understand it, and I think I mentioned, there's also a language school somewhere here. Further in, you come across the big industrial halls, probably the same ones once used for poultry and meat processing, now converted into indoor markets. Now, inside, narrow aisles run between hundreds of tightly packed stalls. Most of them sell clothes, though you'll find all sorts of goods, electronics, cosmetics, household items, toys, tools, you name it. And this is also where some of the criticism of SAPA comes in. A good portion of the clothing sold here is either suspiciously cheap branded wear or obvious counterfeits, fake labels, knockoffs, or unbranded goods of questionable origin. Some may well come from factories operating under conditions that would raise eyebrows. It's one of the things that has kept SAPA under occasional scrutiny for customs, trade and other officials. Still, there's no denying the color and energy of the place. It's chaotic, yes, but also vibrant. And if you're looking for a deal or just want to see a different side of Prague, it's hard to beat. According to the official website of the company that runs SAPA, this place isn't just a market, it's a full-fledged commercial, cultural and educational hub. They describe it as a space that brings together countless business and consumer opportunities in one location. And I think it's true. Because as I walk through these cavernous halls and along the outdoor stalls, I see everything from cheap household goods and clothing to restaurants, travel agencies, legal services, and I hear there's a kindergarten here somewhere too. There are wholesale outlets offering goods not just for local shoppers but also for e-shops and business partners from across the country. The range of products is really staggering. Everything from kitchenware and party supplies to cosmetics, car accessories and even electronic cigarettes. SAPA, they say, is an open and expanding community for everyone and not just the Vietnamese diaspora. And walking around here, it's easy to believe that claim. It really is a self-contained world built on commerce but rooted in culture and community. The relationship between SAPA and the surrounding Czech population hasn't always been smooth, to put it mildly. Like many immigrant communities building something of their own, the Vietnamese here have sometimes faced suspicion or resentment from locals. I would even say open racism, especially in the early years when SAPA was still finding its shape. There were also practical issues. Over the years, SAPA has experienced several fires, most notably in 2008 and 2013, fires that raised concerns about safety and fire regulations. Health inspectors have also on occasion reported issues with expired or improperly stored food. These incidents have undoubtedly reinforced negative stereotypes, especially in some media. But despite the setbacks and scrutiny, SAPA has not only endured and survived, it has continued to grow and professionalize, slowly building stronger ties with the local authorities and community. So, that's my little walk through SAPA, Prague's little Hanoi. It's not exactly around the corner from the Old Town Square, frankly, and getting here does take a bit of time. The easiest way is probably by metro and then bus, and yes, it's in the far south of the city. But if you want to see a completely different side of Prague, one that's kind of global, gritty, flavorful and full of life, it's absolutely worth the trip. And as always, you'll find map, some photos and extra info on the Prague Off the Beaten Track page at the Radio Prague International website. So, thanks for listening and see you somewhere unexpected next time.
Prague Off the Beaten Track. Vít Bohanka takes you away from the crowds to the city's hidden gems.